Mafia's lost daughter. Riley Donoghue had built a life away from the shadows of her family's legacy. A respected teacher in a quiet town, she had escaped the dark ties of the Irish Mafia that ruled Hell's Kitchen. Growing up, she had known only the harsh reality of a world dominated by men. Her father, the feared Patrick Donoghue, and her 4 overprotective brothers. Her mother had died when Riley was just a child, leaving her to navigate a world of crime, violence, and unyielding expectations without a maternal figure to soften the brutality. She had spent her childhood yearning for a tenderness that never came, a warmth that was overshadowed by gunfire and whispered threats in darkened rooms. Growing up without a mother had left her feeling like an outsider even within her own home. Her father and brothers had been hardened by their world, showing love in ways she often struggled to understand, through protection and control, rather than softness and affection. It had made her resilient, but also left her with a deep ache for something gentler, something safe. This longing had driven her to become a teacher, a role where she could offer the love and guidance to children that she had so desperately craved herself. But even as she built that life, a part of her had always felt incomplete, as if she were constantly trying to fill a void that could never truly be erased. For years she had convinced herself that she didn't need the power or wealth of the Donoghue family. She wanted freedom, to be her own person, without the weight of her name dictating her fate. All she wanted was a normal life, a life where she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder. And for a while she had it. She threw herself into her work, becoming an exceptional teacher who inspired her students. Every lesson she taught was infused with a warmth she had longed for in her own childhood. She made sure every child in her classroom felt seen, valued, and safe, something she had craved but never received growing up in a world ruled by hardened men. Her past had taught her resilience, and she passed that strength onto her students, teaching them not just academic lessons but also about perseverance and kindness. It wasn't just a job. It was her way of rewriting the narrative, of ensuring that no child under her care ever felt as lost and alone as she once had. Despite the void in her heart left by her past, she found solace in shaping young minds, teaching them the power of knowledge and resilience. Riley was beloved by her students, respected by her colleagues, and even received awards for her dedication. Her classroom became a sanctuary, a place where she felt valued and whole. But no matter how much success she gained, the shadows of her past lingered, waiting for the moment they would reclaim her. Then she married Matthew Carter. At first he was charming, promising her a future filled with love and security. He had a way of making her feel special, as if she were the only woman in the world. After a childhood spent craving warmth, she had fallen hard for the illusion of safety and devotion he provided. He whispered sweet promises in the quiet of the night, swore he would give her the love she had never known. "You deserve the world, Riley," he would say, his fingers tracing delicate patterns on her skin. "And I'll be the one to give it to you." She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, because for the first time, she wasn't just the daughter of a crime lord or the sister of fierce protectors. She was a woman who was loved. But love, she would soon learn, could wear many masks, and his was the most deceptive of all. Their early days were like a dream, candle-lit dinners, whispered confessions under the stars, and the gentle brush of his fingers against her cheek as he told her he would always protect her. He made her feel special, desired, something she had longed for after growing up in a household dominated by cold, calculating men. For the first time, Riley believed she had found her own love story, separate from her family's legacy. But over time, his mask slipped. "You're wasting your time teaching those kids," he scoffed one evening, slamming his glass on the table. "What do you even make? Pennies? I should have married someone with actual ambition." His words cut deeper than she cared to admit, but she bit her tongue, hoping it was just a bad day. Then, the dismissiveness turned into blatant disrespect. She caught him whispering on the phone late at night, his voice hushed and amused. When she finally confronted him about the other women, He simply chuckled. So what if I do? What are you going to do about it, Riley? Leave me. You have no one, and you're nothing without me. The first time he raised his hand to her, she was too stunned to react. The second time, she told herself it was a one-time mistake. The third time, she realized she had been lying to herself all along. When she tried to stand her ground, to tell him she deserved better, the violence escalated, each slap, punch, and kick stripping away the love she once thought was real. Riley endured it, convincing herself that she could fix him, that he would change. She believed in love, in vows, in the idea that marriage meant standing by each other through thick and thin. But she had underestimated just how cruel Matthew could be. The night she lost her baby, everything changed. She had dreamed of being a mother for as long as she could remember. She often thought back to the nights when she was a little girl, sneaking into her brother's rooms just to feel less alone. There was one memory that stood out: the time she had found a wounded stray kitten in their backyard. She had cradled it in her tiny arms, rocking it gently as if it were a baby, whispering soft reassurances. It had been the first time she had felt the warmth of nurturing something so fragile, of giving love without fear. She had nursed that kitten back to health, and in that small act, she had discovered a part of herself that longed to provide the care and gentleness she had been denied. From that moment on, she knew she wanted to be a mother, to give a child the security, love, and kindness that had been absent in her own life. Growing up without a mother had left a gaping void in her life, one that no amount of her father's cold discipline or her brother's rough love could fill. She had yearned for a nurturing presence, for the kind of love that soothed rather than scolded, and in her heart, she had vowed to one day provide that love to her own child. It was why she had become a teacher, to give children the warmth and guidance she had so desperately needed. So when she found out she was pregnant, she had clung to the hope that their child would be the start of something better. A fresh start. A chance to create the loving family she had always wished for. A reason for Matthew to change. But he didn't. That night his rage was uncontrollable. The argument had started small, over something trivial, but his anger escalated into something monstrous. "You always find a way to ruin everything," Matthew shouted, his voice venomous. Riley, standing her ground, placed a protective hand over her belly, a silent plea for him to remember what was at stake. "Please, Matthew, our baby—" "That baby was never my idea," he snapped, his eyes dark with fury. "You think trapping me with a kid is going to change anything? You're pathetic, Riley." Before she could respond, his fist connected with her side, sending her crashing to the floor. She gasped, a sharp pain tearing through her abdomen. Tears filled her eyes as she curled into herself, hands clutching her stomach, desperate to shield the fragile life inside her. "Stop, please," she whimpered. But Matthew didn't care. He kicked her again, his blows merciless, each one shattering more than just her body. As agony consumed her, a terrifying realization took hold. Something was terribly wrong. A sharp, searing pain ripped through her core, and she felt a wetness between her legs. The world blurred as darkness crept into her vision. As she lay there, broken and bleeding, her trembling fingers pressed against her belly, pleading for a miracle that would never come. She woke up in a hospital bed, the sterile white walls a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed her life. The hollow ache in her womb told her the truth before the doctors could. Her baby was gone, and she had never felt more alone. Riley didn't remember much of what happened next, only that there were whispers in the hospital hallways, hushed voices speaking her name. Then, she saw them, her family. Her father, Patrick Donoghue, the ruthless boss of Hell's Kitchen, stood at the foot of her bed, his face carved in fury. Her 4 brothers, Liam, Connor, Declan, and Finn, surrounded him, their expressions unreadable, yet burning with unrelenting rage. She had grown up in a world of men who spoke with their fists and protected what was theirs with blood and bullets. And now, looking at them, she saw the full weight of their fury, not just as Mafia enforcers, but as a father and brothers who had failed to protect their sister. Riley swallowed hard, her body aching, but it was nothing compared to the emotions swirling inside her. Shame, relief, grief. She had spent years pushing them away, convinced she didn't need their protection, that she could carve her own path. But here they were, standing before her, their rage not directed at her for leaving, but at the monster who had done this to her. Liam clenched his fists at his sides, his knuckles white. "Jesus Christ, Riley," he whispered, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. "Why didn't you tell us?" Tears welled in her eyes as she tried to find the words. But Declan spoke first, his voice rough. "Doesn't matter now. We're here, and he's going to pay." Her father's gaze never left her face, his expression a terrifying mix of rage and grief. "No man touches my daughter and lives," Patrick said, his voice low and lethal. "I promise you that, Riley. He's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet." Riley had spent years running from them, refusing to be part of their world. But blood was blood, and no man, no coward, would lay a hand on a Donoghue without paying the price. Matthew Carter never saw it coming. By the time he realized he was being hunted, a chill ran down his spine. The familiar comfort of control slipped from his grasp, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. His phone calls went unanswered, his usual haunt suddenly barren. The city that once felt like his kingdom had turned into a labyrinth, its alleys whispering with unseen threats. His breath came faster as he walked, the rhythmic tapping of his shoes on the pavement drowned by the pulse pounding in his ears. He glanced over his shoulder, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. Was that a shadow moving? A flicker of motion from the corner of his eye? He picked up his pace, his mind racing. "Calm down, Matthew," he muttered under his breath. "They don't know. They can't know." But deep down he knew better. Then, the soft click of a gun safety being released echoed behind him, stopping him dead in his tracks. The cold weight of inevitability settled over him. It was too late. The Donoghues struck like a vengeful storm, precise and merciless. His business was reduced to ashes, his bank accounts drained, his allies too afraid to stand by him. Every piece of power he had built was torn from his grasp until he was nothing but a desperate man running out of places to hide. He had never truly feared anything before until now. The shadows were closing in on him, and he knew whose hands guided them. Panic set in, his breaths turning ragged as he stumbled through the dimly lit streets. He needed a way out, but there was none. They were everywhere. The moment he turned the corner into a deserted alley, he knew it was over. A cold steel barrel pressed against the base of his skull, and he froze. Before he could beg, a brutal punch landed against his ribs, knocking the air from his lungs. He collapsed to the pavement, coughing blood. Liam crouched beside him, his voice a low growl. "You think we'd let you get away with what you did to our sister?" Connor kicked him hard in the gut, making him writhe in agony. "You took everything from her," he spat, "and now we take everything from you." Matthew tried to crawl away, but Declan grabbed a fistful of his hair and yanked his head back. "How does it feel? To be the one begging?" he sneered. Footsteps echoed down the alley and silence fell as Patrick Donoghue approached. The air was thick with the weight of what was about to happen. He knelt beside Matthew, his face eerily calm. "You took my grandchild from me, boy," Patrick murmured, his voice dripping with lethal finality. "This is mercy, compared to what you deserve." A single shot rang out, and then Matthew Carter was no more. Riley should have been afraid when she saw what her family had done. She should have felt horror. But all she felt was relief. In the chaos of her world unraveling, she saw a familiar face among her father's men, Killian O'Sullivan, her high school sweetheart, the boy who had once sworn to love her forever. But he was no longer a boy. He was a man, and not just any man. He was one of her father's most trusted enforcers, a man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure. The moment their eyes met, it was as if no time had passed. "Riley," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. She hadn't realized how much she had missed him until that moment. When he reached for her, she didn't resist. His embrace was warm, steady, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. "You shouldn't have come back to this world," he murmured, brushing his fingers against the bruises on her face. "But I swear, no one will ever hurt you again." Healing wasn't easy. Riley had scars that ran deeper than skin, wounds that time alone couldn't mend. There were nights when she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she would ever feel whole again. The memories of Matthew's cruelty haunted her, the ghost of his words still echoing in her mind. Was she truly worthy of love? Could she ever trust again? Doubt clawed at her in the quiet moments, whispering that she was broken beyond repair. She struggled with guilt, feeling as though she had let herself down by staying with him for so long. But every time she wavered, Killian was there, grounding her. He saw her pain, felt her hesitation, and never pushed. "You don't have to be strong all the time, Riley," he told her one night, brushing his fingers through her hair as she lay curled up beside him. "You've carried enough weight on your shoulders, let me carry some of it for you." And she did. Slowly she learned to lean on him, to trust the warmth of his embrace and the sincerity of his love. Each day, she pieced herself back together, learning that healing wasn't about erasing the past but about moving forward despite it. But Killian was patient. He stayed by her side, proving to her every day that love wasn't supposed to be painful, that she wasn't meant to endure suffering to be worthy of happiness. There were nights she woke up crying, haunted by the ghost of the life she had lost. Killian would hold her, whispering reassurances, his touch a balm to her broken spirit. "You're safe now, Riley. I've got you," he would murmur, pressing soft kisses to her hair, grounding her back to the present. He didn't just love her, he cherished her, and in his arms, she finally understood what love was supposed to be. Slowly she allowed herself to fall again, this time into arms that would never let her go. She learned to smile again, to laugh without fear, and with every moment, she realized that she wasn't just healing. She was living. One evening, as they stood on the rooftop of her family's estate, the city lights flickering below them, Killian took her hands in his. "I lost you once, Riley. I'm never letting that happen again." Tears shimmered in her eyes as she cupped his face. "You never lost me, Killian. You've always been my home." With a gentle sigh, he leaned in, and when their lips met, it was more than just a kiss. It was a promise, a silent vow of forever. His hands cradled her face with reverence, his lips moving against hers with a passion that told her everything he couldn't say in words. She melted into him, letting the past dissolve between them. In that moment, Riley knew she had survived, she had healed, and most importantly, she had found love again. And this time, she wasn't going to run.